Welcome to the Goodyear City Council meeting. We're excited to have you be a part of this important public process. Tonight, you will have the opportunity to address City Council on both non-agenda and agenda items. You must fill out a speaker request card in order to address the City Council. The agendas and speaker request cards are located in the back of the council chambers. Please drop your completed card in the tray next to the blank speaker cards. If the meeting has already begun, please hand it to the city employee at the back of the room. You may check the "I do not wish to speak" option on the card. This allows you to let council know your opinion without having to speak. In accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, please contact a staff member if you need any assistance. Public comment on a non-agenda item will take place during the citizen comment portion of the evening. These are items that don't appear on tonight's formal agenda. The city clerk will call your name when it's time for you to speak. At that time, please approach the podium and tell us your name for the record. You'll have a maximum of 3 minutes. The timer is on the screens visible from the podium. Note that you may also choose not to speak if other speakers before you have said what you wanted to say. Shouting, cheering, and loud noises will not be tolerated, and violators may be removed for disrupting the meeting. Goodyear City Council meetings stream live on Facebook, YouTube, X, and online at goodyearaz.gov. Follow the city's social media pages so you don't miss out on all that's happening in Goodyear. Thank you for coming to this meeting and being an active part of your city. And remember, it's a great time to be in Goodyear.
I'd like to call a regular meeting to order for December 15th, 2025. Please mark everybody present. Is Councilwoman Gillis on the phone?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we gather here today as members of the City Council, we pray that we are all ever mindful of opportunities to render our service to our fellow citizens and to our community. Keep in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas on which those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better city, one where we'll strive to make Goodyear a great community and not just a collection of neighborhoods. I also ask that the Almighty Father to protect from harm all of our men and women in uniform and service in our community and country here and abroad, and you help this nation find a way to move forward and work together for the betterment of all. Also, I end by saying I wish all a happy and safe holiday. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Let's see, now is the time for members of the public who wish to address the City Council on any non-agenda items within the jurisdiction of City of Goodyear. We have any speaker cards?
Yes, Mayor. Stephen Lauritano.
Good evening, Mayor Pizzillo.
Well, let me start there saying, you know the rules. Your name, all you got to do is say you're a resident, and you got 3 minutes. Go ahead.
I am a resident of Goodyear, and good evening, Mayor Pizzillo, Vice Mayor Campbell, and City Council and staff. My name's Steve Lauritano. I'm here before you to discuss bicyclist safety. Over the past couple of years, we've been noticing a lot of issues with accidents and injuries from bicyclists. The two concerns that I have, one of them, I don't know what the answer is, and that has to do with distracted drivers. Go back in time. Back in the 80s, I used to race for a team. And part of our training regimen was we would ride a double century, which is 200 miles for a training run. That 200 miles, I never thought about getting into a car accident with a car behind me running into me. A couple of months ago, I went on a bike ride here, and I'm thinking to myself, a lot of people have cell phones, and a lot of people are on their cell phones, and a lot of people are driving in the bike lanes. So I got a little leery about riding my bike, and I figured, you know what, maybe it's time we did something about it. Maybe we started the conversation. Maybe, bring awareness to this issue. How do we stop people from veering into the bike lanes? Well, there's a couple of solutions, and some of them are fairly inexpensive. One of them being rumble strips on the divider between the bike lane and the main road. And they have different types of rumble strips. They have shallow ones, which would be great for bicyclists. Anything that alerts the driver that they're changing lanes or coming into the bike lane would be better than nothing. That was one of my concerns. The other concern is bike lane maintenance. Most of the roads in Goodyear are in good shape, but all of the dirt from the main roads it's being tossed into the bike lanes. Now, if a car runs over a 3/4 inch rock, you might feel a little bump. If a bicycle runs over a 1/4 inch rock, it could be devastating. So I just asked the city of Goodyear to look at the maintenance of the bike lanes. Thank you.
No, thank you. And City Manager, you got the information to follow up?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Will the city clerk please read the consent agenda items 1 through 8 by title only?
Item 1, approval of Series 9 location transfer with sampling liquor license for Safeway number 1511. Item 2, approval of Series 12 restaurant liquor license for Bag of Crab. Item 3, approve budget amendments and related expenditure authority. Item 4, recognize the 2026 City Council Subcommittee appointments. Item 5, approve intergovernmental agreement, IGA, with Maricopa County Goodyear Police Department, GYPD, recruit training. Item 6, adopt resolution number 2025-2497, authorizing and directing the city manager to communicate the city's desire to participate in the Maricopa County Home Consortium and receive federal funding under their Home Investment Partnership Program. Item 7, adopt resolution number 2025-2498, authorizing the city manager and/or their designee to execute a license agreement between the City of Goodyear and Level 3 Communications, LLC, a Delaware limited liability company, and to enter into separate agreements for in-kind exchanges, which may include fiber and/or conduit for the city's exclusive use. Item 8, award of contract with WBCP, Inc. for executive recruitment firm.
Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Councilwoman Gillis, is there anything you want to pull off?
No.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Let's go ahead and open up. Let's say first we got a motion and a second. City Council enter a motion and a second, approve items 1 through 8. It's up on the board. Go ahead and open for voting.
Councilwoman Gillis, please state your vote for the record.
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Thank you. We have 5 public hearings tonight. First public hearing is to consider 4-year water, wastewater, and solid waste master plan. Going to open the public hearing. You're up. Go ahead and give your name for the record.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Keeney Knutson, Deputy City Manager. Before we get into the presentation discussion related to tonight's public hearing and vote, I wanted to provide a little introduction and some background. What is before you tonight is a proposed 4-year utility rate plan for our water, wastewater, and solid waste programs. We were in front of you last month, provide an overview of the rate setting process, which included a study of our rates and our needs, a citizen committee, a public engagement process, and council feedback. It was a very detailed presentation back in November, and I promise you that tonight's presentation will be much more brief as an overview of the recommendation provided before you to this evening. However, before we get to the presentation, I wanted to cover some of the common themes that we heard at the November meeting and also what we've heard over the last few weeks leading up to the public hearing. First one is related to the stormwater fee. It's not on the action for tonight, and the reason is that that was originally included in the recommended rate plan, but raising rates is not something that's ever a comfortable discussion, and it's not an easy vote to cast. But tonight it's not part of it, and part of the reason is, or the main reason is that mayor and council, after we had some talking with you at the retreat back in October, you made it very clear you did not want a stormwater fee, a new stormwater fee as part of this utility rate plan. So that is why it is not included in the action this evening. Secondly, we've heard is that our city rates are already expensive, especially on the water and wastewater side, and there are reasons behind there. And most of them are good reasons, and they are mostly related to the fact of unique aspects and challenges that are presented by Goodyear. First one is related to our geographic location and the fact that we have a reliance on groundwater and surface water that has a quality of it that we have to do a lot more treatment to it to be able to get it ready, to be able to put it out to our residents and to make sure it's high quality drinking water. Secondly, I just point to is a lot of other cities, some other cities in the valley are able to rely on Salt River Project water. We are not able to do that. That's a decision that was made decades ago that we were not able to be part of that. So we are with the water resource that we have, which does not include that, which is a little bit of a lower cost water, the Saltwater Project water. We've also heard a little bit about the city not taking appropriate steps to be able to take advantage of efficiencies and lower costs and be able to mitigate some of those rising costs. A couple things I wanted to point out on that we have, our Water Services Department in particular has made a lot of changes and implemented a lot of different measures to be able to control those rising costs. Some of those include use of automation, implementing alternative cost-effective maintenance strategies, leveraging grant funding opportunities, seeking out regional partnerships to be able to control some of those costs, and optimizing how we operate our plants. I would also mention from the area of conservation, one thing that we haven't really talked a lot about is that our department, Water Services Department, has implemented or completed all of the recommendations of our Water Conservation Committee made a number of years ago, trying to make sure we're doing our part to be able to conserve water. And then finally, I would note that what's happened over the last few years, we've had a significant increase in costs, an increase in inflation. A lot of other cities around the valley went back to their councils or to their boards to be able to ask for specific inflation-related rate increases. We did not do that. Our city staff used two of their core values, adaptability and innovation, to be able to stay within the 5-year rate plan structure that council approved back in 2021. So that's one of the couple of the themes there. The last one I wanted to mention was the idea of growth paying for growth. These rates that we're talking about tonight are rates that our residents in our commercial properties pay for using city water and wastewater services. This is not related to growth or expansion of our systems. When we're working with developers, they do pay specific fees related to the work that they're doing, but also for the growth-related impacts to our system. So growth does pay for growth. This is about operating and maintaining our current system as it is. And now I will turn the presentation over to Ryan Biddle, our finance manager, and he'll take you through the presentation. But we also anticipate you're going to have a number of questions. We have the full team here as well, between myself and Ryan, our Water Services Director, Barb Chappell, and Samit Homohan, our Public Works Director. And we'll be more than happy to take questions at the end of the presentation, but I'll turn it over to Ryan.
So good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ryan Biddle, and I'm the Finance Manager of Budget and Research here at the City of Goodyear. And as Keeney mentioned, I'm here to present on the City of Goodyear utility rates, more specifically provide an overview of the rate setting process, trying to toe that line between being brief but thorough and highlighting some of the major stakeholders, touch points, and topics previously discussed, leading us to the point where we are tonight in the process. So the City of Goodyear currently has 4 utility programs that have varying service areas within the Goodyear city limits. The city's solid waste and stormwater programs provide service everywhere within Goodyear city limit boundaries, with solid waste only providing services to residential customers. We also have water and wastewater programs, which are by far the largest city utility programs, and they provide services to both residential and commercial customers south of I-10, as noted by the purple line on the slide you're looking at. Most residents north of I-10 are on the Liberty Water and Wastewater Utility Service area. Please note that staff recommendations for council this evening only relate to water, wastewater, and solid waste, although I will be mentioning stormwater a couple additional times in my presentation, but only for historical context as I'm recapping prior conversations that we've had. So the city's been working through the process of setting new rates for our utility programs, as just mentioned, since April. We commonly refer to this as the rate setting process. Doing a rate study, you might even hear the term rate model thrown around, but they all more or less mean the same thing. Every city-ran utility in Arizona at some point goes through a very similar process to ensure they have the necessary resources and to continue providing safe and reliable services to their citizens and customers. Goodyear's currently adopted rates expire at the end of this calendar year, which is why we started this detailed, labor-intensive, important process nearly 8 months ago. Listed on this slide are the key stakeholders made up of both city personnel as well as independent third parties, So from a city staff and leadership perspective, the primary participants were the Water Services Department, who oversee our water, wastewater, and stormwater programs, Public Works, who oversees our solid waste program, as well as Finance, to crunch the numbers, and the City Manager's Office to oversee everything and provide strategic guidance and direction. The city partnered with Willdan Financial Consulting, who we've been in contact with regularly through this endeavor. Willdan has a team of dedicated professionals who do nothing but help municipalities all across the U.S. navigate through the municipal utility rate setting process, and I want to once more thank them for their help with this process. Another key group of individuals is the Citizen Committee. We also refer to them as the Citizen Water Advisory Committee, and they're made up primarily of City of Goodyear residents who we met with about a half dozen times through this process, sharing details around the inner workings of our city's utility programs. And last but not least, City Council, who we've shared the results and recommendations of the rate setting process with over the past several months. So if you listen to public utility rate discussions from other cities around the valley and across the country, you'll likely hear at one point or another them mention some variation of these 3 bullet points on this slide, which are key to understanding the goals and objectives of utility rate setting. First, a lot of public utilities function as what we call enterprise funds. This means the costs of the programs must be covered 100% by the fees collected for service. Second, most established public utilities have some sort of internal finance policy component meant to help ensure operations can continue for a period of time in case of an emergency. Here at the City of Goodyear, our financial policy requires us to maintain a reserve equal to 15% of budgeted ongoing revenues each year. Third, and most important of all, to accomplish all this, we need to try to make sure and minimize the impact of fees charged on ratepayers. So with those 3 goals in mind, we wanted to quickly highlight the Citizen Water Committee as one of the key stakeholders in the process. This slide shows the various dates that we met and some of the details of what we talked about in each meeting. I'll go over here in just a second. So in April, we kicked things off with kind of a public finance 101 discussion. We dove deep into the City of Goodyear financials, talked about enterprise funds, what makes them different from governmental funds. We discussed rate structures, various customer classes used to track and collect city revenues, major expenditure categories, both ongoing and one-time in nature. We then went over the various steps and associated timelines with the rate setting process, making it very clear that ultimately the committee's role was to provide a recommendation to City Council. In May, we discussed the water and wastewater programs in depth. The committee is very familiar with those programs as they've been established since 2023 and have met regularly to talk about the city's water and wastewater programs. We did the same thing for solid waste and stormwater in June. In July, we took a little bit of a break while staff worked with our consultant, making sure we reconcile all of our figures, assumptions, and then going through various rate scenarios and proposals along with the pros and cons of each. In August, we got back together and discussed with the committee potential rate recommendations for council, the impact of those proposed rates on citizen bills, as well as landing on a recommendation of a 4-year plan. And then finally, on September 10th, we formalized those recommendations, which were passed by a vote of 4-2. Just like I did with our consultant, I want to make sure and thank our Citizen Committee for all their time and energy that they put in, as this is not a very easy process. So thank you once more for their dedication. So part of the committee's recommendation as we switch gears to City Council's involvement was the recommendation to implement a new stormwater fee. This recommendation was shared at the September 15th work session, but after additional discussion, as Keeney mentioned already, council chose not to move forward with the new fee at this time. That meant, for staff's perspective, the scope of the rate-setting process was reduced to focus only on the water, wastewater, and solid waste utility programs. We discussed the various steps of the process with council and interactions between the city, the consultant, and our citizen committee. We've shared information about each utility program, including but not limited to existing system components, compliance with financial policy, timing of future debt issuances, and rate recommendations for each. We discussed sticking to our philosophy of growth paying for growth as a tool to minimize the impact of rate increases on residents. We compared our rates versus other Valley cities and dove into some of the key cost drivers, which I'm going to go over on the next slide. As council is well aware of, but maybe more so for the public, there is I think it is 100 pages exactly, document, which is the full rate study provided by our consultant that's been on our city's website since October. That goes into much more detail than I'll be able to cover tonight, and much more detail than probably anybody would want to know about that. But just know that this is just the tip of the iceberg for tonight's presentation versus all the discussions that have happened to this point in the process. So as we talk about those major cost drivers, some of those Keeney hit on already, the first we wanted to highlight was our cap water. Cap water makes up a big portion of the city's water portfolio, specifically our reliance on cap water. It's known as the Colorado River water, but unfortunately it is much more expensive than one of the alternatives, which is SRP water, Salt River Project. In fact, we pay over $8 million a year just to get cap water into our system before we can start treating it for our customers. Unfortunately, the cheaper SRP option was divvied out back in the early 1900s, so that is not an option for us to get at this time. That being said, the city is always looking for cost-effective ways to reasonably acquire and diversify our water portfolio. The second item worth mentioning, again, something that Keeney hit on, is the treatment of our groundwater. Knowing that this is something else that's a big part of our water portfolio, staying in compliance with regulatory bodies requires additional steps that other cities might not have to go through, which is something that unfortunately drives costs in the wrong direction. Next is Goodyear's geography. So essentially we have limitations on the terrain and aquifer locations within the city limits to where we can place our wells. So unfortunately, these locations that we can use aren't always optimal from a cost perspective. So this drives the need for additional infrastructure to connect all of our wells into our system. Additionally, we have varying degrees of elevation scattered within the city limits, leading to even more infrastructure challenges that need to be maintained, such as additional lift stations, additional miles of water and sewer main, and this setup makes it difficult to maintain economies of scale, again, despite our best efforts to minimize costs. So when it comes to staffing, public utility operations are kind of a niche market requiring years of specialized training. So as many are likely seen in their own industries in the job market, unfortunately, the demand for this skilled labor pool outweighs the supply, which is why we list this as an ability to attract and maintain talent as a cost driver that is currently affecting us today and unfortunately will likely to continue to affect us into the future. Finally, even though we are a public utility, that does not make us immune to operational cost pressures driven by limited suppliers, commodity prices, and tariffs, just to name a few things. So our water and wastewater operations include over $5 million annually in electricity, chemical, and fuel costs, which, just like our residents, we have to try to absorb in our budgets. For example, I mentioned this last time we spoke. I know APS is proposing a 14% rate increase next year. That is a cost that is passed on to us, something that we have to try to absorb into our budgets as well versus just passing them on to our customers. So the end result of the cost drivers that I just went over and all the touch points with council, citizen committee, and our consultant kind of boils down to this slide and the recommendation to increase rates by the amounts shown in front of you. So this visual shows a breakdown for each utility with residential customers on the left, commercial customers on the right, along with the current direction from both the citizen committee and city council. Again, note that despite the Citizen Committee's recommendation to add a new stormwater fee, as mentioned in red per direction from council, we will not be moving forward with the stormwater fee. So for Goodyear residents, this is probably the slide they care about the most, which shows monthly customer bill impacts over the proposed 4-year plan. The total impact of the 3 proposed rate increases comes up to $8.50 a month more next year for the average residential Goodyear customer. You can see that amount on the total monthly bill impact row. That equates to roughly a 5.8% increase versus what residential customers are currently paying. Now, that percentage is incremental. I want to make sure and call that out. So year over year, you're seeing essentially the same increase, roughly 5.8, 5.9% over the 4-year plan. This slide shows the exact same information, but shows the average customer bill as opposed to just the increase each year. The takeaway again is that equates to roughly a 5.8 to 5.9% increase in customer monthly bills for the next 4 years. Here we're showing exactly what we just showed for residential, but for commercial users. Commercial is basically any customer who isn't a single-family home in the city service area. The average monthly bill increase for commercial users is projected to be right around 6.6% higher each year for the next 4 years. And as noted previously, we don't currently provide solid waste services for commercial accounts, so that's why that row is blank. Here's the total cost for the average commercial bill. Just keep in mind that this will vary quite a bit depending on the type of commercial account that you're referring to, but this is just the high-level average. Again, the takeaway is that 6.6%. So this slide is a timeline of the various touch points of the rate-setting process. You'll see again the Citizen Committee and Council discussions referenced, along with our statutory obligations, all of which have been satisfied as of this point in time. So this evening, we're asking Council to adopt Resolution Number 2025-2499, adopting the proposed 4-year water, wastewater, and solid waste rate structures and providing for effective dates. To close out our presentation, this slide shows a list of additional steps the city has taken above and beyond the minimum statutory requirements, making sure every effort has been made to notify customers of the proposed upcoming rate increases. If approved, the rates will go into effect in February of 2026. So once again, staff's recommendation is to adopt Resolution Number 2025-2499, adopting the proposed 4-year water, wastewater, and solid waste rate structures and providing for effective dates. Thank you, and we're available for questions.
Okay, first up, we have any speaker cards?
Yes, Mayor, I have 2 speaker cards. First up, Jeff Redmond.
Good evening, everybody.
You know how it goes, Jeff, just your, whether you're a resident or not, you got the 3 minutes. They'll let you know when you get closer to it.
Very good, I do. And Merry Christmas to all you and to everybody in the room. I think my question was answered, but since you're sitting so close here, maybe I could present it. I did look at that 100-page document that was made available, and it was pretty mind-numbing. I was looking at the consumption for residential, for a single-family residence, which went up about 12% in the last 3 years. Consumption for the industrial went up about 70% in the last 3 years. And then I looked at the forecast of the next 10, and is there something going on here? Excuse me, guys, do you mind? I looked at the next 10-year forecast, and it looked as though residential usage was going to go up about 30% in the next 10 years. And it also looked as though the industrial usage was going to go up about 30 to 34%. So my question would be, if we saw a pattern of 12% residential increase in the last 3 years and 70 industrial in the last 3, how is that next 10-year example so close, industrial to residential? Am I reading the data wrong, or do you understand the question? Is there any way you can
somebody
maybe
answer
help
that for him?
I'm sorry.
What, Barbara?
There we go, I'm on.
Okay.
Sorry about that. The background of that study, and in the very beginning, you might have saw a section called Land Use Assumptions. And so part of our planning process begins with that. We take what the city has been seeing through development services, the way the land use is applied from the general plan that was adopted by our residents, and we utilize that information to project what we think development will be over the next 10 years.
So it's pure projection.
Correct.
So actual use is billed at actual uses,
Yes.
basically. Okay. And then the other question I would have I kind of maybe answered my own question, but the new data center, right? I did a little research. A data center of that size uses about the equivalency of 8,000 to 10,000 homes worth of water daily. So it's up there. Do a little research on your own. You'll find that it's kind of, you'll have the same reaction I did, Mayor. My question would be, are they being billed at a higher rate of usage than the resident? Or are they just being billed at the same rate based on the millions of gallons, the tens of millions of gallons they use each month?
Let's go back
So
to Barb
I can
over here.
answer that
Okay, yeah.
question. So we only have one data center that is water cooled that uses a larger amount of water. The others are pretty insignificant with their demands. And yes, there is a special rate they pay that is much higher than what a residential customer would pay.
Okay,
That was negotiated at the very beginning with their development agreement.
right on time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. What else you have?
Tom Hilmer.
Yeah, Tom, just whether you're a resident and keep an eye on the clock.
I am a resident. I've been a resident for 20 years. My name's Thomas Hilmer. I may not be talking at the right time. My understanding is I want to talk about the Litchfield water increase. Is that included in?
No, that's a separate utility company, and we have no control over them whatsoever.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Well,
That's,
thank you.
yeah, Liberty Water. In fact, I think if you've got some issues with that, they go through what, the Corporation Commission?
Yep, that's
Arizona
correct.
Corporation Commission.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm one of their residents, and I hear that increase is going to be quite substantial.
51%.
That's what I had heard, so thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Anything else?
Jose Salazar.
Yeah, and Jose, if you're a,
Yeah,
member of the.
sorry
of the
about
city-
that. I
That's
didn't
okay.
even know I had to sign papers.
That's fine.
My biggest thing is on the wastewater and the solid waste. I live in Cedarville Gardens. Cedarville Gardens has septic tanks. We do not have wastewater or solid waste because they go into our septic tanks. So why are we being charged this?
Barb, can you answer that?
Yeah, you should not be being charged sewer fees on your bill. If you do see a sewer charge, please come see us on the second floor. We can get that straight. But yeah, there's no sewer. And the solid waste fee may be on there, but that's for the trash pickup in the front of your home. So that's the difference.
I have my own bin.
Okay, so then your bill should reflect no sewer and no solid waste fees. You should have water only.
Okay, all right, hold on. He'll give you that, yeah.
Sir,
Can you they can't hear you without talking up and on the mic. So if you would, just be up there at the mic, and then maybe when you're done, Barb, you can take him to the back there and square that away.
That'd be it.
Okay? You see Barb in the back there. You got anything else?
sir, Mayor, I believe we're going to need Barb there, so can I get Sumit or someone else to
Okay.
meet this gentleman in the back?
All right, Sami? Sami's gonna join you in the back. Anything else?
Sorry, Anthony's here. He'll go take care of that.
Okay,
I have no other speaker cards.
okay,
Mayor.
thank you. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public, huh? Yeah, do you got anybody in the audience want to speak? Okay, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. City Clerk, plead Resolution 2025-2499 by title only.
Adopt resolution number 2025-2499, adopting the proposed four-year water, wastewater, and solid waste rate structures and providing for effective dates.
Thank you. Council will enter a motion and a second to adopt the resolution 2025-2499. I see a motion and a second. Before I go to Trey, let's see if Councilwoman Gillis has any questions.
Yeah, I do. I have something to say, but bear with me. I'm sitting in a flood zone with no power and a flashlight. So can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you.
All right. Here's how I feel on this. Whereas I appreciate everything and all the work that everybody's put into this, I really do believe that we need to ask ourselves as a city, have we done enough to keep our costs down? And I'm not sure that I can answer that with a yes. I understand the hours and hours that the Citizens Committee has put into this, and I thank them for that. But I can't help but wonder if a total increase of 23.4% over 4 years is necessary. Can we do something more on the city side to reduce this burden on the ratepayers? Have we looked enough at this option? This is not the time, I don't believe, to raise rates on residents. I believe that the city needs to look at itself more before it looks to the residents to fund these increases right now. Therefore, I will be voting no on this issue.
No clapping, please. Thank you. Go ahead, Councilmember Terry.
Okay, appreciate it, Mayor. I do have quite a few questions that I want to run through. Barb, appreciate you're still with us. Want to make things very clear just to understand what we're talking about. Is this proposal at all about Goodyear running out of water or being short of water? Or is it strictly about the increased cost of delivering, recovering, treating, and redelivering the water that we already have?
Correct. We are not running out of water. This rate is strictly based on the cost of service to provide safe, reliable drinking water to our residents and collect and treat the sewage that we get back.
Okay. So the rate plan last changed in 2021. In the presentation, I know it talked about some of those big cost drivers. Can you go into a little bit more specificity on what those cost drivers are, like what we use to treat the water, all the minerals and stuff that are in it, as well as staffing, as well as all the, I'm just looking for a little bit more specificity. Sorry, it's a long day. I'll say it 6 times, you know what I mean. On where that is, so we can match up kind of line by line on where some of these increases are coming from and where they're heading.
Yes, so some of the driving factors for the city of Goodyear, such as the poor quality groundwater, I think is one topic that's been discussed. And we have multiple constituents in that supply. Just because of where we're located, a lot of the subflow of water flows downstream and it gets full of lots of salinity, which we call total dissolved solids. The only way to remove those is through reverse osmosis, which is very energy intensive, which makes us very vulnerable to those high increases in electricity over these last few years. Additionally, we have things like arsenic in our water, and we still have to use separate processes to remove that as well. No other city in the valley uses reverse osmosis to treat their drinking water. They may use some of the treatment technologies we use for things like arsenic, but they don't use the high energy intensive reverse osmosis. We've also seen about 30% or more increases in our construction projects for infrastructure rehabilitation and capital projects. You guys may have also recognized that impacting things like fire stations and other things that we build in the city. We're not immune to those cost increases either.
Okay, so you got a little bit into the geography. That was something when I first came on this council at the beginning of the year, learning about, we're down river from the rest of the valley, and we are over-reliant on groundwater and surface water, which leads to those costs. On the labor front, when it comes to being able to reduce the cost. We heard about enterprise funds, and I'll get into that later, about it being able to pay for itself. What are some of the skills required for like a wastewater tech? What is the labor market there? What are some of the other highly specialized jobs that are treating our water, or that are taking care of our water and redelivering the water to our residents to make sure that we have clean, healthy water supply in our city?
There's very specific training required and certifications that are issued from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality in order to qualify an operator to work in our system and on our facilities. And the more complex your treatment technology is, the higher level of those certifications are required, making us, again, a very difficult, and it's a hard to fill industry. We have a shortage of operators. We're always struggling with people even not knowing that there's those career paths even exist. So we're doing a lot of work with the high schools in the city to try and develop those.
I remember, my previous role before last year was with the high school district, and I know we've been working on that front to hopefully impact that workforce development. But beyond labor, talked about some of the chemicals, all those things. What do the supplies look like to actually treat this water? What types of chemicals? What is that process? I know it.
Yeah.
We're getting deep in the well, so to speak here, but I think it's important for the public to understand what it takes to deliver water on a daily, on-demand basis.
That's one of our biggest drivers. We've seen 111% increase in the cost of the chemicals that we use to operate our system. Varying chemicals, we use certain acids to lower pH levels, because different chemical or different treatment technologies require the water to maybe be at a different pH. So we're always adjusting pH up and down in order to go through treatment technologies and then back so that it's safe for people to drink and safe for our distribution system. So we've got chemicals like that. We've got chlorine, which a lot of these are used, again, by multiple water systems in the valley, and so we can sometimes be subject to maybe delivery impacts. Maybe there's a shortage of a certain chemical, so we're always trying to make sure that we're resilient in the supplies we have on hand. We don't over-purchase, but sometimes deliveries can be delayed if there's other, maybe larger systems that used up all of the chemical that was maybe in the valley, but this stuff gets trucked from miles away, other states. It gets moved throughout the nation and has to be delivered to the facilities where we need them. Again, you got fuel costs that have been rising that impact those deliveries as well. I mean, it's all connected, really.
Okay. And the presentation talked about how this affects our water service area, which is strictly south of I-10. About 40% of our residents, I think that's about the breakdown, that are north of I-10 are on Liberty Utilities. All that impacts there is the solid waste that we're talking about. But to address, or to at least dive in a little deeper on talking residential versus commercial, I know, we see social media comments. There's a reason we highlight this out in the public as much as possible. I know there's frustration with growth. I know, frustration on industrial, on, apartments, data centers. We brought up data centers tonight. Can you speak kind of bluntly, if at all possible, how many data centers do we have in the city of Goodyear? How many of them are within our water area, and roughly what portion of the total system demand do our large commercial and industrial users take?
So I believe there are 6 data centers in the entire city. 5 of them are in our service area. They use combined 3.6% of our annual demands for our whole system. Some of our other, like commercial, there's about see, commercial is about 1.4% of our customer base, but they make up 6.4% of our demands. So they are using a little bit more than their percentage of our makeup. And multifamily is also about they're about 3% of our demands. Commercial is about 6.4 of the demands, and industry is 3.6. The rest is pretty much single family. And
Okay, and then I don't know if this one's gonna be more for you or perhaps Keeney or Katie. When a new subdivision or large employment project comes in, how do our water and wastewater development impact fees and offsite infrastructure requirements ensure that the growth does in fact pay for growth? It helps pay for pipes, plants, storage, and needs, rather than putting the burden on our existing residents. Is that still you, Barb?
Yeah, I
Okay.
got that.
Sorry, I'm going to start jumping here in a second.
No problem.
And then I'll be done, Mayor. I appreciate your time.
So the infrastructure that's needed to serve the particular project is installed at the developer's cost. That's the way our policies are written. Anything that's regional in nature, so if it serves multiple properties, such as a treatment plant, the city would do those improvements, and you are correct. The impact fee that is collected when they pull their permit is what's used to pay for those improvements.
Okay, I do have one for the city attorney here. Speaking of impact fees, under Arizona law, can we simply push this problem strictly onto new development by dramatically raising impact fees, or are there specific legal limits on how those fees can go and what they can be paid, allowed to pay for?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Terry, following up on what Barb just stated, impact fees can only be used for capital improvement costs for new development. So the operations cost, personnel costs, chemicals, none of that is eligible for impact fees under Arizona statute. There's no limit contained in Arizona statute, but the cost must be proportional to the burden imposed. That's undertakings laws, and that's the analysis you also have to do in imposing the impact fee. So you have those limits as to what is the proportional cost in the market for that infrastructure that's imposed. And then, of course, there's certainly market stability, market competitiveness that a council would consider in imposing the fees too. So probably a long answer is there's no hard cap, but there's kind of a formula you have to follow under the law to get to what that cost to be imposed is.
Okay, and then my question from there is, on those impact fees, do we, to the extent possible, utilize that whenever there's any form of new growth or development within the city?
Yes.
Okay. I guess for folks, and again, I'm trying to do this just for transparency's sake, to get things out in the open as much as possible for folks who don't live inside our city budget every day. Ryan, maybe this is for you. Can you explain the difference between our general fund and these water, wastewater, solid waste, enterprise funds, and why, you mentioned how it's supposed to pay for itself. Why, in general, utilities are expected to pay their own way through user fees?
Thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Terry. So our general fund, the sources, there's a lot of them, but kind of the larger ones are our city sales tax, state shared revenues, primary property taxes, development-related revenue, just to name a few. And those are programmed each year as part of the city's budget process. It goes to fund programs and offerings such as public safety, our Parks and Rec department, as opposed to enterprise funds, which have set user fees that can only be used to pay for the service that residents are getting out of it. If you were to use general fund money to pay for utilities, you're essentially having to compete for the same dollars that public safety and parks are now getting with our utility programs, which is not the optimal way to allocate resources, in my opinion, within the city.
Okay. Earlier, we talked about the stormwater fee that council chose not to bring forward. I didn't see in the presentation, how are stormwater fees currently being paid? Like what were they meant for? How are they being paid for now? And how much is currently being absorbed in the general fund and continuing to be absorbed in the general fund? You know, that this council, you know, I remember urging strongly, we were looking for ways to trim. How much are we talking about, and how are those, where's that being covered right now?
So our stormwater program is the newest of the 4 city utility programs. It is the only one that is not currently set up as a enterprise program. That was part of what we went through the rate adoption process to try to vet through. Council has chose not to move forward with that. So that is currently being funded by the general fund and will continue to be funded by the general fund. I believe it was around $3 million a year is the ongoing cost for the current program.
Okay. You know, residents north of I-10, I know, are facing, a gentleman brought up, it's around 50% one-time increase in their water and wastewater fees. Why are we choosing not to do a one-time fee and instead phase a smaller fee and spread that out over 4 years over the course of this plan?
So yeah, yes, Liberty, I also live in the Liberty Utility District. So it's roughly a 50% increase between water and wastewater all in. So that is their first increase since, I believe, 2018. That being said, if you would have spread that out equally over the past, what, 8 years, I believe, it comes out to roughly 6% a year. The city's stance has always been, for lack of a better example, a 6% increase year over year is easier from a customer perspective to figure out how to fit that into their household finances, as opposed to having to take that entire increase at one point in time, which is a much more difficult endeavor.
Okay. Barb, probably for you here, if we continue to hold our current rates, what does that mean for our reserves, bond coverage, and the ability to deliver on these capital projects? And, you know, what does the proposed plan buy us in terms of reliability, regulatory compliance, and avoiding future large spikes, things like that?
So there's a few questions there.
Sorry, I
no,
can get
that's okay,
long-winded.
and I can't answer the bond question, but I can say that if we don't have the revenues to manage our assets, we could get into a situation where we run systems to failure. Our reliability of our system would not be there. Customers may even see impacts in water outages and having, different lengths of time that we might have to shut parts of our system down because they're in disrepair. One of the things that's also in this is the unfunded mandate for treating of PFAS. Those are the forever chemicals that people have been hearing about in the news that the EPA created a new rule on, and we are required to put in treatment for those constituents by the year 2029. And so we need to start getting revenue in order to treat for those chemicals.
Okay. And I know it was part of the presentation, and I know the city manager's been on it as well. Again, I came in January, and we knew this was coming. I can't really quantify how many meetings we've had off the top of my head, but as your presentation laid out, we've been from citizens committees to outside auditors to outside consultants, just talking as much about this as possible, trying to make it as transparent as possible. And that's something that I want to make sure we ensure. So I guess, from my perspective, for folks watching, I am a conservative. I don't like raising what people pay to government. I oppose tax hikes. I oppose fee hikes. But we also need to make sure that our residents that rely on the City of Goodyear's water system have safe and reliable water and wastewater service. We are not running out of water. To my knowledge, we are, even if the entire Colorado River water plan completely dissolved and we got nothing, we are still under that cap. We're running at what, like maybe 48% of our capability, or again, I'm speaking off the top of my head, but there's something like that, correct? Even under emergency plans over the next couple years, if the entire Colorado agreement went away, we are still in a safe-ish position. It starts getting a little close and a little dicey, but to my knowledge, we're doing much better than other cities. Is that correct, Barb?
We do have some redundant supplies. We've been doing a lot of work storing water underground and making sure that we have those supplies for the non-rainy days.
Okay, yeah, I want to emphasize that this is about the cost of delivering, pumping, treating, storing, and reusing the water, modern standards, costs that have been passed on to us by either the legislature, federal government, the EPA. Chemicals cost more, power costs more, construction costs more. And I don't think we can pretend to solve that by, cutting your budget. That doesn't make sense, or even freezing your budget. At the end of the day, that could turn into a public safety issue if we're not having, we're in a desert. If we cannot deliver water on demand, that becomes a public safety issue. We discussed how other utilities looking at large one-time increases. Instead of waiting for that cliff, I do like how this plan phases those in. I pray that makes it easy. This isn't easy. It's not. But to be able to phase it in a predictable way, it's not painless. I don't expect people to be happy about it. I don't. I'm not happy about it. But I do believe that this approach is more honest and fiscally responsible than just pretending nothing has changed since 2020 or 2021 when it comes to costs. I'm deeply concerned about affordability out there. But I say this as openly, I'm a fiscal conservative, concerned about that affordability problem. That's the biggest thing you hear out there. Anybody running for office next year is going to be talking affordability. That the price of things have just skyrocketed the last 5 years. I will be voting for this rate plan. I do it because I believe in paying the true costs of essential services, planning ahead, avoiding crises, and at the same time, I will be working on the other side of the ledger. I know we've had multiple discussions, Ryan, mayor, city manager, when it comes to property taxes and other areas we can look to help offset the burden where we can, because I know it's hard for families to absorb this kind of thing. This isn't easy. It's kept me, I won't say really it's kept me up, but it's so much time on this over the last several months. I can't thank you enough, Barb, for the work you've done, just the transparency with us, opening the books. If you want, some light or hard reading, that 100-page report, Ryan, that it's on the agenda, that's open to the public. It's on our website. You go to the agenda here. It's included in the attached documents. Appreciate your work on that. And with that, I will end my filibuster of this meeting, Mayor.
Thank you. Before I just pass it on to you real quick, I just want to make one short comment because I think Councilmember Terry has covered a lot in his discussion there, was that if we have to use any general fund money to cover your budget, that means that the general fund budget gets hit. And currently right now, at least in the last budget, 67% of all of our general fund operating went for first responders. So just kind of keep that in mind for the council, okay? Go ahead, Councilmember Kano.
All right, thank you. Before I get into my line of questions, I just wanted to thank Digital Communications for their work in getting the word out. Did a big campaign on social media telling people about the increases, what the impacts are. I did read a lot of the comments, and data centers were certainly an ongoing theme, but I feel like that's been asked and answered, so I won't go into that. Next, I want to thank the Citizens Water Advisory Committee. This is a tough job. They have a lot of responsibility. They're talking about a lot of different things, but when it comes to rates and you're a resident of the city, and you get all the detail. As Ryan said, they spent months with them talking about all the impacts, and then to have to put forth a vote and a recommendation to city council to make those increase. That's not a hard thing to do. I mean, that is a hard thing to do, so I just want to thank them for their work on that. All right, Ms. Barbara. There was some question about efficiencies. I know that Keeney mentioned certain things, but is there anything else you can elaborate on regarding efficiencies that you've done?
Without getting into
Too
actual
much detail.
specific detail on projects, but I will say we have had some really good success with looking at alternate methods of repairs, for example, and resulted in some significant savings for some of our projects. We also, when we're looking at replacing something, we don't necessarily just look to replace like for like. We really dig in and make sure that we're using the right piece of equipment and that it's functioning as it's intended. And if there's other alternatives that are maybe less operational, labor intensive on the operations side, then we'll make those changes as well. Technology always changes, and I think we need to, if we're going to call ourselves innovative, we've really got to look at how do we move forward. We don't just do things because that's the way we've always done them.
That's great. Now, there's some discussion about portals so people can see their water usage, can tell them if there's leak alerts, things like that.
Yeah, so one of the things we've done recently is we've implemented what is known as AMI, which is an automated meter infrastructure, and it allows us to collect data on a more frequent basis without driving around the neighborhoods and collecting meter reads. And what that's allowing is for our customer service group that's in the finance department, they do our billing for us. It's allowing them to implement a customer portal that will help customers find and repair, find leaks and get solutions for how to be more efficient with their water consumption as well.
Okay. And I think we're really focused mostly on residential rates. I think commercial rates are probably the cost of doing business. But when you think about a typical Goodyear home, where is most of the water used?
Outdoors, for sure. Most of our demands is outdoor use.
Okay. And so what can residents do to decrease their residential usage?
They can implement a drought-tolerant plants or landscape in their yards. We do have large turf conversion projects we've been working on with some of the HOAs, because that's another one of our large customers. And just turf. We do understand that it makes sense to use water for recreation as well, right? We need to have areas for children to play. We just need to make sure that it's in the places that make sense. Children don't play near roads. We probably shouldn't have grass in medians or on corners of intersections, for example.
And I think we've done a lot with our landscaping designs to eliminate those types of things. We've been proactive on this to reduce water usage, through landscaping designs. Even here, we've recently converted turf to artificial turf, just trying to be smarter about that. Okay, if growth stopped today, would our rates still go up?
Yes. So even if we added no more new water connections, the simple fact that the costs are rising on chemicals and electricity and everything else, we still need to increase rates in order to cover the rising cost of our operations. Again, we are a cost of service entity, so we only charge what it takes to run our system.
So I serve on a regional water association representing Goodyear there, and I started in January, and every month the conversation is about the Colorado River. And it is anticipated there's going to be cuts. We can't confirm necessarily what those are. Looks to be about 20%. Been a lot of discussion internally what that means. I mean, and that's only one source of our water, but if we have to prepare for an uncertain water future, I'm hearing about it, I learn about it, and we can talk about it, but you're the one who actually has to prepare for these types of things. Can you talk about what it is that you're doing in anticipation of cuts and then what, and not in great detail, but just the role of infrastructure, finding new sources, things like that, and just in general terms.
Yeah, so a few things. We always look for regional partners where we can. We're trying to be as efficient as we can. We do rely a lot on Colorado River water supplies. The city of Goodyear is in a fortunate situation where we are not currently reliant on all of those supplies that we have at our disposal, where some cities are. So when the Colorado starts to cut, this is where it gets confusing for some, is every city or every water utility is different. So in some cities, they're already using 100% of their Colorado River water. So when 20% gets cut, they've got to right away replace 20%. Because we don't currently use 100% of our Colorado River water, we've been able to store the extra supplies and acquire what is called long-term storage credits that we can then lean on when we do have to start making cuts and our demands need it.
Great. You've really had to diversify and plan ahead. And to your earlier comment about technology, my opinion, you're probably behind in technology, and that would lead to greater efficiencies if we could take that time to invest.
Yes, especially in things such as our automated controls and things like that, yes.
Ryan, would you mind bringing up slide 10? Okay. Either you or Barbara, could you explain why the the water rate is not that substantial, but the wastewater is a bump up. Why is that a higher cost?
I'll take that one
Okay.
too. The last rate plan, the wastewater was actually a little bit smaller than this one. It was actually smaller than the water on the last side. This one is mostly driven by some really large capital projects that we've been investing in. And one of those is a brine management project that had significant costs. There's still lower costs the way we ended up moving forward because it is a regional project and it will provide capacity in the system once we get that. The brine is the byproduct of the reverse osmosis treatment. It creates a very concentrated stream of the constituents that we removed from the water, and it right now goes to a wastewater treatment plant, which is not sustainable, and it causes issues with regulatory requirements. So by removing that from the sewer plant and sending it out to Palo Verde Nuclear Power Plant, they can use it for cooling water, and we get that bad, really poor quality water out of our city, and we're not putting it back in the ground with reclaimed water.
So I recently toured the nuclear plant, and they were pretty excited about that water coming to them. Yeah. So that's definitely a win-win. And I think that was a very innovative solution to an expensive problem for us. So, thank you. Ryan, I don't know if you, it wasn't included in any of the presentations, but I did find it in the audit report that we discussed last week, and it has to do with pricing tiers. So I believe it's from 0 to 6,000 gallons, there's a price, and then it goes up accordingly. Can you elaborate on that? I mean, trying to form my question here. If based on, I think what we determined, the average home uses 7,500 gallons a month. And then, so with that pricing tier, I mean, does that provide some flexibility for people to plan and try to utilize the lowest price? Or how do you come up with the 6,000?
So the 6,000 tier is the same tier that we've had in the previous adoption rate. Literally anything that is able to be changed was on the board and looked at.
Okay.
But we determined at this point in time it makes the most sense to leave it as is. As new homes come on, they are more energy and water efficient. The hope is that just because we're adding more buildings, more rooftops, that over time, it'll kind of equal itself out to be right around where that threshold currently is, but more time's needed to kind of review that.
Great, thank you. You know, nobody wants to raise water rates. I mean, this is the kind of meeting that makes, it's hard. These are hard decisions to have to make, but we were all elected to do the hard things. And some of the questions certainly had to do with data centers, efficiencies, things like that. I believe a lot of that has been asked and answered. Goodyear is really fortunate. We have a very talented and well-respected water services director. We have highly regarded water professionals on our team. And I know that they're always working to look how to do things better. So as I've discussed before, it's very critical. We do not defer any infrastructure. We've got to keep up with the water. The worst thing we could do is have some type of water incident. We want our residents to be able to turn on the water and know that they're getting safe water that meets all the water standards, that the water's always there when they turn it on. They shouldn't even have to think about it. But God forbid there's some kind of water incident because we haven't been able to keep up with our responsibility. Those are things you don't recover from very quickly. So I am also going to support this water increase. I know that another city in the East Valley is about to do a 25% increase. I am, like Councilmember Terry said, I am much more in favor. It's far more fiscally responsible to implement incremental water increases to graduate over time. And who knows, by the time we evaluate rates again, what kind of technologies or improvements that might be available. But I thank you both for your time and for your answering your questions.
Councilmember Beckles.
Yes, well, I appreciate everything that has come up today. I don't specifically have any questions. And like Councilmember Terry, I'm only 1 year into being on City Council. Unlike Councilmember Terry, I have been up at night thinking about this. I live south of I-10, which will be impacted, and I am a one-income household. So my comments will be brief, though. I personally, as with everybody else, struggle with inflation, and I do not want my utility rates to increase. However, I worked in the water department for another Arizona city for 8 years. What I know is that providing safe, reliable utilities, especially water, is a very complex issue. And I think if you've listened to everything that has been said today, you know that. Rejecting rate increases is certainly a resident-friendly approach. It is also an approach that was taken by Jackson, Mississippi, Compton, California, Martinsville, Indiana, and Comanche, Texas. Each one of those had water issues because of not raising rates when they were needed. They had service issues like service interruptions, boil water alerts, plant failures, burst pipes, and foul-smelling water, all leading to further and higher increases. I'm not saying that that's going to happen in Goodyear, but it's certainly something we need to think about. As they said, the utilities are supported by our user fees and not a city's general budget. What I know for sure is that our system is safe. To keep our system safe, we need infrastructure projects to replace and rehab aging water production wells, improvements and wastewater treatments are needed, and a few other projects that our director talked about. Rate decisions are not taken lightly by any of us. Do I want higher rates? No, I do not. But I do want a utility operation that provides safe, reliable service for all of our citizens. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the rest of the council hit a lot of the questions. So I wanted to clarify, so I know the Citizens Committee, when they put together the plan, is it supposed to be, why 4 years and why not a farther timeline, a farther ramp up?
So we actually, thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Hampton. So we actually forecast 10 years into the future. The farther out you get, the more things can happen, the less reliable the numbers. So 4 years as opposed to 10 is probably, we have a better degree of accuracy on our forecasts, as opposed to 1 year. If you were just to do 1 year, I know Barb, specifically speaking, wouldn't want to have to plan her operations over multiple years with only 1 year of guaranteed funding sources approved at a time. It would make it more difficult and be more difficult from a rate-setting environment to only go on a year-by-year basis. So a 4-year plan kind of hits that sweet spot.
Okay, so we could make it a longer time ramp up if we wanted to. We could take it to 5, 6, or 7 years.
Correct.
We could do that, okay. I'd be more in favor of that. I think 5.8 is a little higher, especially with inflation down to 2-3% right now. I know it jumped up in the past. So I'd be more on board with a 3-4% increase over time as opposed to a 5.8 over time. I'm not sure that looks like extrapolated out over that period, but I'd like to see something like that. I know the Citizen Water Committee, I think they were on board with something, kind of a mix of that as well. I know only half of it passed, but I think there was some contradiction there as well. So I know it needs to be done. I just don't know if I agree with the rate that we're doing it at. So I'm on board for all the same reasons everybody else is with moving it, but I would like to see it spread out a little bit more. So I'd probably vote no on this, how it's set up here at this time. So, but do think that we need to start increasing it over time. Thank you.
Well, first, I want to thank council for all the great questions that you had, and it is a complicated issue. But the thing I want to really drive home in all of this is if we're under billing or if we're under collecting, and the general fund has to pick up the slack, because you're not going to allow the water system to go under. So if you're subsidizing with general fund, and we are by $3 million for the stormwater, so you're already lowering your rate by throwing the $3 million in there. If you do that, since vast majority of our general fund operating budget goes for public safety, and there's no doubt about it. The last budget was 67% was our first responders. Eventually, you take money away as we grow from that particular pot, as well as our parks and recreation. That's why it's important that our utilities pay for itself, because you don't want to take it away from things as we're growing. Like I mentioned, either our first responders, public safety, or any of our parks, et cetera. So that's why the enterprise fund is set up the way it is. I tend to think that we are looking for efficiency. I feel very confident with Barb and her staff over there. They're going to keep looking for more of them on there. So I'm on board with that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and open for a vote. And you get Councilwoman Gillis first on the line, what her vote is.
Councilwoman Gillis, please state your vote. Thank you.
No.
Passes 5-2. Thank you. Next public hearing is to consider an amendment to the zoning ordinance related to objective standards, definitions, accessory dwelling units, and middle housing. Please introduce yourself for the public. Open public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Pizzolo and City Council. My name is Christian Williams, Planning Manager, and before you this evening is a zoning ordinance text amendment to address state legislation that was approved in this last year, which impacts middle housing, accessory dwelling units, and objective standards. So with the passage of House Bill 2721, staff created a middle housing overlay district to permit middle housing, that is townhouses, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes on any lot that is zoned single-family residential and located within 1 mile of the city's downtown, which is GSQ, but also not within the vicinity of Luke Air Force Base. Despite the law, Goodyear has done an incredible job adding these types of housing options to our downtown without the state needing to intervene. The photos shown on the screen are residential projects that already exist within the proximity of GSQ, and that create opportunities for middle housing density around our downtown. This legislation also encourages development communities to include middle housing within new residential communities. As part of the state law that was passed last year, the city currently has to permit accessory dwelling units. However, those accessory dwelling units are not permitted within the vicinity of Luke Air Force Base or the vicinity of a public airport. So that'd be the Phoenix Goodyear Airport. The amendment, based on state law, will allow and permit ADUs within the vicinity of a public airport so long as they are not within the 65 decibel noise contour lines. Again, this does not impact the Luke Air Force Base, but it will impact areas in Southeast Goodyear as well as around historic Goodyear. And the images on the screen are of ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. And finally, this House Bill 2447 requires municipalities to provide objective design guidelines. And this text amendment allows the zoning administrator to publish addendums to the city's design guidelines to clarify standards that are needing clarification and to ensure compliance with the law. Additionally, we have added and clarified definitions to assist with the compliance of this new state legislation. With that, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard this at their regularly scheduled meeting on December 3rd. Staff and the commission recommend approval of the text amendment, and if approved, the text amendment will go into effect immediately in order for us to remain in compliance with state law. If it's not passed tonight, we will be in violation of state law by January 1st, 2026. With that, happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Anybody in the audience like to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Will the city clerk please read ordinance number 2025-1642 by title only?
Adopt ordinance number 2025-1642, amending the Goodyear zoning ordinance sections 1-2-2 and 1-4-2 of Article 1 Administration of Manual, amending section 2-2 definitions, amending section 8-2C accessory dwelling unit, amending Article 9 special districts by adding section 9-3 middle housing overlay district.
Thank you. Council, enter a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance 2025-1642. I see a motion and a second on the board. Open for discussion. Councilmember Terry.
Thank you, Mayor. Christian, you preempted my question, or at least emphasis of a question, with your last statement, but can you just, for one more time, the sole purpose of this zoning ordinance amendment is to conform and comply with new state laws and nothing else, is that correct? All right, appreciate it.
All right, with that, with no further discussion, can we open it up for, oh, wait, hold on. Did Councilwoman Gillis have any questions?
Yes, I did. That was kind of my question, what Councilmember Terry just said. This is a state law, so really this does not have to do with local government, correct, Christian? We're not in compliance. We don't vote this in, correct?
Correct. We are amending our local ordinances to comply with what the state is requesting.
So it's the state that's making this decision, not necessarily us.
That is correct.
All right, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay, with that, let's open it up for a vote.
Councilwoman Gillis, please state your vote for the record.
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Thank you. Open the next public hearing is to consider rezoning of approximately 1.94 acres for King Ranch. Plan area developed to Rio, 1900 plan area development, open public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Pizzolo and Council. Christian Williams, Planning Manager, and staff is requesting that this item be continued to a date certain on January 26, 2026.
So there's nothing here except moving it to another place, right?
That's correct.
Okay, no further action be taken on this tonight, correct? All right, that's it. Thank you. Yep, next one, next public hearing is to consider the Rio 1900 minor general plan amendment. Again, open the public hearing because it was previously advertised, correct? Is that why,
correct.
Christian?
Yes.
Okay.
Staff is requesting also this one be continued to a date certain, January 26, 2026.
Any speaker cards? Anything?
No, Mayor.
Anybody in the audience? Okay, at this time, we leave public hearing open and continue the item to the January 26, 2026 regular city council meeting. So no further action, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Last public hearing is to consider rezoning property 66.6 acres located northwest of Celebrate Life Way and North Litchfield Road, known as Celebration Plaza, from Planned Area Development to Celebration Plaza First Amendment. Planned Area Development, open public hearing. This is the same issue, correct?
Correct. We'd like to continue this one to a date certain, January 26, 2026.
Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Anyone in the audience like to speak? See none, at this time, no further actions taken. Open and continue this item on the January 26, 2026 regular council meeting. No further action will be taken on this item. We have one item on business tonight, the appointment of a vice mayor. Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Okay, with that, we'd like to entertain a motion to appoint a member of the council to serve as vice mayor for 1-year term beginning in January 2026, with a subsequent vice mayor to be seated during the 2027 council induction. Do I see a motion?
I so move that we appoint, we appoint Brandon Hampton to fill the position of vice mayor starting January 1 to December 31, 2026, at which time a new vice mayor will be selected for 2027.
Do I get a second?
Oh, I didn't mean a second.
You get a second?
I made the motion, I can't second it.
I will second the
Thank you.
motion.
Terry will
verbally.
second it. All right, no, is there any discussion?
No.
Seeing none, vote. Yeah, so you're gonna ask her to vote?
Councilwoman Gillis, please state your vote for the record.
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Thank you. Let's see, council have any commitments, comments, commendations, or reports, or current events, or requests from future item? Councilwoman Gillis, you got anything?
Nope.
All right, how about around here?
I do.
You got something? Go ahead.
Hey, well, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of our residents who have participated in all of the events we've had in 2025. Without your support, we would not have the successful events that we've had. If you've gone to the stadium, the ballpark, and you volunteered there, or you went to our rec center, whatever you've done to help us succeed as a city, we want to thank you. And to those of you that are here tonight, we love having an audience. We appreciate all of you who come and give us your opinions, and we encourage you to continue to come out for the public comment period and talk to us, because you alert us of things we don't necessarily know. And we want to be here to help all of you, and we just thank you all very much. And I want to wish everyone a safe new year.
City manager have anything?
I do have an update on the second night of Holidays on the Square. It was a Charlie Brown Christmas play that took place on December 12th, attracting about 1,600 attendees. It was performed by the Creative Arts and Production Company. We had the Santa food trucks, Goodyear Youth Commissioners helped facilitate some of the arts and crafts, and the rink had another blockbuster weekend with 4 field skating sessions every night for a total of 1,058 skaters over the weekend. And in addition, Hanukkah began Sunday, December 14th, with the lighting of the first candle on the community menorah out front.
Yeah, and I think, just want to pause and just have a moment for all our staff. It seems seamless in all these events that we have out here on the square, and they do such a great job. So, kudos to the staff for putting that on. I know there's a lot goes behind the scenes that a lot of people don't see, but they do a great job of making that so seamless for people to come and enjoy. So with that, next meeting is January 5, 2026. I hope everybody has a safe and happy holiday. No further business. Meeting is closed.
Merry Christmas.